So, Rob, there was an Apple event very close to me here in Chicago just last week. Where was it last week? I'm starting to lose my mind. I'm not sure what day it is anymore. I think it was last week, right? It was Monday or Tuesday. By the time
I don't know. I'm off. I'm off work this week, so I've got no idea what day it is either.
Yeah, it's probably by the time this comes out, it will have been a solid week. But in any event, no, solid 2 weeks. In any event, it was the Apple Education event in Chicago, and I did not go. I did not get an invitation from Apple, but I did do a lot of thinking about Apple and education, and also I went down over the weekend before the event and took pictures of the school. And this school is really something else. I mean, it's a public school, but it's really a private school. It's one of these things they call in the U.S. a magnet school, where you have to apply to get in, even though it's a public school.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's got a lot of financial support above and beyond what the city provides to the school. It's huge. It's like 4,400 students. It's as big as some colleges, really. It's
wow, that is massive.
yeah, it's the biggest school in the Chicago system, I think, and it was built in like 1909. So you look at the pictures, and it looks like, I mean, with that many students, it's a very big campus, and it looks a lot more like a university than it does a high school. And it's right down in the middle of the city. And I went down and took some pictures, and it was kind of fun because I got there the event was on Tuesday. The event was on Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday.
Yeah, I got there on Sunday, which happened to be like the only sunny day in like 2 weeks, so it was really good. But the place was crawling with security and people building things. And it looked like they'd either just started that morning or maybe sat late in the day Saturday, because I couldn't quite tell what they were building. Turns out they were building the security checkpoints that were up near the front of the school. If you saw any of the pictures on Twitter, you probably saw people lined up. Saw people lined up for like a couple blocks, really, to get in, and that was a security checkpoint at the front of the school. And I don't know, it's kind of fun creeping around. I was out on the sidewalk taking pictures, and I asked the guy, I asked one of the security.
At least you did it on a weekend.
Yeah, I know. I thought of that. And so I was walking around, but they were all eyeballing me and keeping track of me. And I asked one of the security guys, "What is going on here? What are you guys building?" And they said, "Oh, it's for some private event," which, he was right. It was a private event for Apple. And so the event happened on Tuesday, and we got, personally, I was very disappointed. We didn't get a lot of hardware. I didn't really expect hardware, but there were things that I expected that really didn't happen. I mean, all we got was a 9.7-inch iPad with updated internals and pencil support, really.
Yeah, I just watched the live blogs because obviously there was no live stream, and I haven't bothered watching the video because there really isn't that much in there. It's not really aimed at me or you anyway.
Right.
But kind of while I was like watching the live blog, I kind of had The Verge open and a couple of other live blogs, and something kept niggling at me. I'm looking at this, I'm like, is this really changing anything about education? Like, is it really that exciting? And after a few days, people started kind of tweeting, like people who manage, either Chromebooks or iPads and stuff like that. And, by all accounts, like Apple's actual management software just is nowhere near as good as Google's.
Right.
And actually, even when you look at the prices, like even for a Chromebook, like say like $200 or whatever per student, if you're doing like a one-to-one thing, like there are a lot of, I'd guess a majority of schools just cannot afford to do that, let alone do it for an iPad, which is an extra $150, $200, depending on what you buy.
Right. No, and in leading up to the event, I did a lot of research on Chromebooks and iPads in schools and things. And Chromebooks have really expanded really dramatically, at least in the United States, in school systems for a lot of the reasons you've probably read about, which, they're easier to manage, they're lower cost, things like that. And schools are already using the G Suite of applications. And so given that they were doing an event in Chicago, which, as it turns out, is a school system that had not too long ago spent about $135 million on Chromebooks, I thought, well, this isn't an opportunity. What Apple's doing is they're gonna stick a finger in Google's eye, and they're gonna announce some big deal with the city of Chicago. They didn't do that. I also expected that they would reduce the price of the iPad, not dramatically, but at least to make it a little bit more competitive with Chromebooks. Maybe, I think education buyers can get the iPad for $299 as opposed to $329, which is what you and I would pay. And I thought maybe it would go down to maybe as low as $250. So we did get an iPad that I kind of anticipated. I thought that we would get the lower cost one, which would essentially just be the iPad we had before this new one was released, last gen, plus one that was a little more expensive, maybe at the current price, with Apple Pencil support, which we got, and a smart connector, which we didn't get. So I don't know. As a result, the whole thing I found a little underwhelming. I think the curriculum that they do, especially the Everyone Can Code, I think it's really good, and I think it's nice that exists. The Everyone Can Create curriculum, which is new and is a way of bringing things like music and video and photography into existing subjects that students study, like history and math and so forth. I think that's interesting and nice. I guess we'll have to see what happens with it and whether it actually amounts to anything. A lot of what was announced, especially like that, isn't going to be available. There's previews of some things, but a lot of it's not coming till June.
Yeah, I mean, which kind of makes sense given what the education cycle is not really going to start till September. For right. Any of this new stuff isn't going to be rolling out to students through schools until September. So
yeah.
That kind of makes sense. But I don't know. I just kind of struggle. I see all this stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is all very cool. But at the end of the day, schools mostly what they care about is the price.
Right.
And I think that's going to be this isn't like the consumer market where me or you will spend a bit more money for an iPhone or for a MacBook, or in the case of the MacBook, quite a lot more money. Because of the experience. Like the people making these decisions for schools generally aren't going to care about that stuff.
Right. I tend to agree. What I do think, though, from a consumer standpoint, it was a good event at least in the sense that there is an entry-level iPad now for $329 that has pencil support, which I think the pencil is an attractive feature for a lot of people. And $329 with an A10X chip in it, that's, yes, they skimped on some other things. There's like Gen 1 Touch ID and that sort of thing, which is disappointing. But by and large, this is a pretty powerful iPad for a really good price.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I was considering getting one, and then I was like looking at the pencil, and to be honest, I think what everyone's screaming is, can we not just have the crayon, which is the new pencil? It's cheaper. It seems to be functionally just a lot better. I know it loses some of the features, but because it's kind of ugly, it feels like the pencil that Apple would have made if they didn't care about design.
Yeah, the jury's out on that one. I'm waiting to see how that actually works in practice, like what the pairing's like and all that. It doesn't have pressure sensitivity, but it would be. I mean, for $50, it would be a nice thing to have, at least to try. But that's really not an option for anyone who's not in the education market.
Well, I'm wondering if a school could just buy thousands of crayons and just start selling them online. They'd make loads of money for the school.
Yeah. I'm sure there's some terms of service somewhere that would get them in hot water with Apple over that sort of thing. But who knows? Who knows? They might fall off the back of trucks as they pass by a school.
Yeah, I well imagine a few people are going to get hold of them at some point.
Yeah.
As you say, like we don't really know how the pairing's going to work and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's kind of nice that there's a new iPad that does support the pencil for somebody like me. I'm never going to buy an iPad Pro. Like I've just got no use for that. But a cheaper iPad with the pencil support is definitely a lot more appealing to me.
Right, and I mean, I think for students, that form factor, that size, 9.7 inches, is actually pretty nice for taking notes in class and that kind of thing. So I think if you're not, it doesn't have the laminated screen, so that means that there's a bit of a gap between the glass and the actual pixels underneath, which makes it, I think, a little harder for you if you're an artist, but especially if all you're doing is taking notes, I think that would be perfectly fine.
Yeah, as I say, I mean, at the moment, I'm trying to maybe spend a little bit less money on frivolous things, but, I might pick up one at some point and, grab an Apple Pencil and just give it a go.
Yeah, that makes sense. We have one in our house, and it's in a sealed box because it's for one of my kids who's not here right now. And I haven't really been tempted to open it because I've got my iPad Pro, but I will be interested to see how it works.
Yeah, I mean, we said this before we started recording, but it's interesting. It's nice that it's been upgraded and it supports the Apple Pencil, but in reality, it's still just an iPad.
Exactly.
There's not a lot for you to say if you get all excited and open it up. And like you say, if you've got an iPad Pro sat there, it's really not going to be that interesting to you.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So I have got some pictures for you, Rob. I was in Seattle. And yeah,
I don't know where Seattle is. I'm going to Google that now.
Oh my gosh, Rob. It's on the left-hand side.
It's in America, is it?
It is in America. It's almost in Canada, though. It's pretty close to Canada.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. It's way up there.
Yeah, it takes a while to get there. So I went to something called the... all right, you're going to have to edit this out. Let me think what it's called. Okay. So I went to the Mo-Pop Museum. It's a museum of pop culture in Seattle. And so most of this collection of pop culture looks like it came from Paul Allen. It's like every little thing was tagged with a sign that said Paul Allen had donated, the founder of one of the founders of Microsoft. And
right.
So I just sent you a picture of the Back to the Future hoverboards that I saw, as well as a Ghostbuster backpack. So it has that. That's the kind of stuff that it has.
Oh, this is very cool.
Yeah, it was a neat place. I mean, they had sections for fantasy, which had a bunch of Harry Potter memorabilia and Game of Thrones, that kind of thing. And then there was fantasy, there was kind of science fiction, there was horror, and they were doing a special exhibit, which was a lot of fun, that was called Indie Games. And so went in, and you could play all kinds of video games from, there were games from the Xbox, the Switch, iOS, all kinds of things. And a few of them, it was kind of fun because I saw Hidden Folks was on there. It was the PC version, but it was kind of cool because that's Adrian DeJong, who was the developer for that. He was a guy that Federico and I interviewed on App Stories early on in one of the earliest episodes, and who I met when he was in Chicago about a year ago. So that was kind of fun to see his game in there, and a couple other ones that I've reviewed in the past. And it was, the one thing though was like I was watching this little slideshow of, it was kind of a history of indie games going back to the early 70s, and they eventually get to the App Store, right? And they have this slide and it shows iOS App Store, an early screenshot of iTunes, and the date next to it is 2007. And I just had to shake my head because the App Store obviously wasn't until 2008. Which,
yeah. Wow. So I assume you just got up and you left. Forget this.
I got to be that. I got to be that guy. It's like somebody should fix that.
Did you see the museum? Is that?
Yeah, I did. I went directly to the front desk and said, well, actually, you need to fix this because this is incorrect, and you're misinforming the entire population of Seattle and all these tourists.
Yeah, this looks like I was just looking at some pictures of this museum. It looks very cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, it's in a big building that was designed by Frank Gehry, who does a lot of weird kind of swoopy looking buildings. There's one there's a music band shell or whatever you call it in Chicago that is designed by him, and it's kind of a neat building right in the center of downtown. Ate a lot of good food while I was there.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, the other aspect of Seattle is I did another slightly geeky thing. Is we went on. They have these Twin Peaks. Do you know that show?
I do know it.
Okay.
I haven't watched it.
Well, it's early '90s show, and it doesn't age all that well. But it was David Lynch directed TV show from the '90s that kind of broke ground for the genre of kind of quirky, weird drama series on television, and it was all filmed in and around towns north of Seattle, near the Canadian border. And you could go take a very expensive tour where they would drive you around in a bus and show you all these things. So we went online and just Googled them all and did our own little self-guided tour in a zip car one day. And it was really neat because there's this big lodge which is one of the main locations, one of the main sets for the TV show, and it has a huge waterfall next to it, and it was really nice. It was good to get out into the actual nature and see what was going on near Seattle instead of just spending the entire time in the city.
Nature is outdoors. You've lost me.
Outdoors, there's water and trees and rocks and all this stuff. I mean, I know it's crazy stuff, but it was a really good opportunity to test out the long exposure feature on the iPhone. I think it's only on the iPhone 10. I think, and take some swirly looking waterfall pictures.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a good time. It was a good time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Sounds like you've had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was good. I was only there for a few days, thanks to the Apple event, but but it was still a good time, and it's good to be back and just kind of getting back into my routine before I take off and do more travel, like San Jose later in June.
Of course, yeah. I guess that's the next big thing that's coming up.
Yeah. That came. I think that since the last time we talked, that is new because they did get it finally announced. And I was right about the dates. Fortunately, I already had a hotel because within 15 minutes, the entire hotel that I'm staying in was booked.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's there's just so many people trying to. It doesn't matter how big your city is, you just can't. You can't get that many people in there and not have the hotel prices jump up like crazy.
Yeah, I got really concerned about flights very quickly too because I figured that. I didn't think it would be a big deal, but you never know. Once people started learning they got tickets later in the week, that's when I was worried that the prices on the airfare might jump up or they'd just not be available because I had been holding off because I usually use this app called Hopper to track flight prices and then jump on flights once they once the price goes down, and it works really well, but it's a little bit of a gamble because it's just based on past experience. There's no guarantee that will in fact, that you'll get a better price if they say wait. So it makes me a little nervous sometimes, but I've been buying plane tickets as a result quite a bit lately.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to WWDC. See what they're going to announce. I'm sure it's going to be a bunch of features that I'll be excited about and then never use.
I know
because I just don't use my phone enough.
Did you see the weird story from Mark Gurman this morning that there's going to be like a curved iPhone?
Oh, stop it!
Curve from the top to the bottom instead of side to side like a Samsung phone. It was a really weird article. Some of the stuff that sometimes comes out of Bloomberg just makes me scratch my head because you know what it probably is. Probably some guy whispered to him in a bar that they're prototyping and testing, and I'm sure they test all sorts of things.
Oh, I'm sure they've got hundreds of prototypes that are going into the next 5, maybe even 10 years.
Yeah, but
it doesn't mean it's coming out in September.
No, and the story was, we might see this in 2 to 3 years. Like, okay, and we probably won't too. I mean, I don't know. That kind of stuff I always find amusing, but because he has good sources sometimes. But those kind of stories are I don't know. I don't really feel like they're worth the paper they're printed on.
Yeah, they're a bit far fetched, but. Oh, well, I don't think we've got anything else, really.
No, I haven't been playing many games since I've been traveling, although I did download the Burnout remaster, which I like a lot. Only just barely scratched the surface there, but it's kind of a cool open world style. I like crashing cars, Rob, is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, that's why that game sells.
Yeah, it's fantastic. The more spectacular the crash, the better you do, so... That's my kind of game.
Exactly.
But I got to dig into that a little more. Maybe we'll talk games some more next time.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna start playing a few that I've got here. I've got Crash Bandicoot, which I got for Christmas, which I still haven't started playing.
And by the way, they're announcing a date for the Spider-Man game today.
What?
Yes. Mike Hurley told me this morning that I think Game Insider has an exclusive that they're going to reveal the date, and I saw a GIF of some gameplay that looked amazing.
Oh, you made me so happy. That's amazing.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe it's 2019 for all I know, but we should find out anytime now.
No, it's definitely coming this year.
Okay.
Because all the staff are doing their final play test right now.
Uh-huh.
I'm really hoping it comes out before the summer. Because Jess is away for 4 weeks and I'm going to be at home by myself. And unfortunately, Red Dead Redemption 2 isn't out, so I'm hoping Spider-Man will be out.
Yeah, I think Red Dead's November, maybe.
I think October 26th,
that's right.
maybe.
You know what it was? I think the next Call of Duty is going to be in November, and the speculation is it's time not to conflict with Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Because usually, from what I'm told by certain people in my household, as to the exact date that Call of Duty tends to come out every year.
Right.
It's not my game.
I
But,
don't. No, it's certainly not mine either.
but I know far too much about it.
Oh dear. Cool. Should we wrap it up for this episode then?
Sounds good.
And I'm gonna stay tuned to Twitter and wait for the Spider-Man announcement.
You should. I'll find this GIF and send it to you.